Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Friday Ramblings. I am here, as always, to ramble on about all things entertainment. And we are going to jump back into our series on the heroes of the Justice Society of America and their legacies. Because it's all good fun, and let's be honest, it pretty much gives you, if you watch all of the separate episodes, a nice little backbones history of all things DC, because since the JSA were the golden age and original era of heroes, at least the A-listers, covering all of them also covers pretty much all the subsequent generations, because there's not many Justice Society heroes who didn't have a legacy, and people take up their identity later on. So let's break it down with a person who's not necessarily always seen as an immediate front rank thought person in JSA when you say, hey, name some JSA members. And that is Wildcat. Despite this, though, he is a long-standing and proud member. Now, the original Wildcat was Ted Grant, a heavyweight championship boxer who, after hearing about some of the other heroes of his generation, was inspired to become a hero himself. Having no direct superpowers, Ted Grant relied purely on his exceptional skill as one of the top-ranked boxers in the world. He would don a cat-like mask and costume, calling himself Wildcat. During this time, Ted Grant would, as I say, serve with great honor in many missions for the Justice Society, as well as running missions on his own or teaming up with non-Justice Society members of his era. Ted was known for being a rough and tough, blue-collar kind of guy who respected anybody, hero or villain, who could put up a good fight. Although he was not a stupid man by any means, he was what is often called street smart. He had a great sense of people's character and understood concepts like strategy and thinking analytically, even if that really only applied primarily to what to do in a fight. But that is the point. He wasn't simply a dumb tank who refused to fall down until he beat you through sheer marathon gauntlet fighting, or some super strong one-punch kind of guy. Ted understood when to dodge, when to duck, when to dip, and when to hit back. He was infamous for felling a lot of villains with a single punch once he managed to break through their defenses. Now, Ted Grant was one of many heroes who was attempted to be retired during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. Some of those heroes were flat out killed, along with several other villains. Ted, however, suffered great injuries, and during the Crisis event was declared paralyzed for life. However, only a couple years after the Crisis, due to writers still wanting to use Ted Grant, as well as wanting to eventually retire the JSA with one last grand adventure, which we have discussed in the video about the team itself. It was said post-crisis that Ted Grant's injuries were not as severe as originally diagnosed, and he was able to return back to crime fighting, although it should be noted that, especially in the first initial adventures, he mentioned feeling his age a bit and being a bit stiffer in the joints. Of course, most of these JSA adventures, because they were prepping the team to be shunted off into limbo for a, at that time, presumed permanent retirement. Most of the JSA members were pointing out their age. This being a way to help psychologically clear the deck for the JLA to cement themselves as the A-list team. Although post-Crisis was not exactly a A-list era for the Justice League either, but I mean, that's marketing for you, and editorial. Still, Ted Grant would return with the rest of the JSA and find himself, due to a couple different magic spells, feeling younger and more spry than ever. Eventually, though, Zero Hour would hit, his aging would be restored much more to the age he should be, and he once again decided to be more of a part-timer and mentor. Not just to young superheroes, teaching them how to survive fights with villains, but more importantly, being a full-time boxing trainer, training the next generation of heavyweight champions, as boxing will always be his first love. During these various eras, Ted Grant would not only hook up with Catwoman Selina Kyle, but it was revealed in flashbacks that the time-displaced Hippolyta, mother of Wonder Woman, who was herself taking on the Wonder Woman role at this time, would, during the JSA's heyday, have a romantic relationship with Ted Grant. Good on you, sir. Good on you. However, as we said, initially during the Crisis, Ted Grant was considered forcibly retired and then himself disappeared along with the rest of the JSA into limbo. So what's a person to do? Well, you find an heir to the throne. In this case, it would be Yolanda Montez. Yolanda Montez is the goddaughter of Ted Grant, who was a good friend of her father, boxer Brawler Montez. As a result of prenatal treatments given to her mother by the mad scientist Dr. Benjamin Love, Yolanda Montez was born with retractable claws on her fingers and toes, as well as cat-like agility. Initially, she concealed her abilities, living a normal life, becoming a journalist for Rockstars magazine. However, when Ted's initial Crisis injury sprang up and his subsequent disappearance, Yolanda used her powers to take on her godfather's legacy. During this time, she would serve almost exclusively with Infinity Inc. up until the team's disbandment at the end of their book, in which she would appear only a couple more times before, along with former Infinity Inc. teammate Beth Chapel, herself a legacy hero that we will discuss on another episode. Shh, no spoilers. They were killed by the mad, supernatural, cosmic-powered Eclipso. This death would actually affect Eclipso many years later, as during a period where he was imprisoned, his power would be siphoned off by Wildcat's cousin, who's Alex. Hold on, I think he has a last name. Let me sidestep my other notes here, but Alex would attempt to use the power of Eclipso for good as a way of both honoring Yolanda Montez's heroic desires as well as torturing Eclipso, as the mad demon-esque being now had to watch his legacy be reformed and rehabilitated as a hero. Alex Montez, same last name then. Okay, so right, proper side of the family tree. Fortunately, Alex Montez's turn as a heroic Eclipso would not last long. Alex, having used ritualistic runes carved into his skin in order to both trap Eclipso and channel his power. This all came to a head when injuries suffered in a war in the fictional nation of Kahndaq caused a couple of the runes to be... Pardon me, I think I'm alright. Got to think of the right adjective here. disfigured by injuries and subsequent new scar tissue, thus weakening Alex Montez's hold on Eclipso, who very quickly took control of the body. Eclipso, however, decides to commit suicide in order to prevent Eclipso from controlling him any further beyond the event in Kahndaq. Eclipso would eventually return, but that's a story for another time. Still, a little bit of a side tilt to the Wildcat Legacy. Yolanda Montez herself, as I said, only served for a brief time in Infinity Inc., not being a founding member of the team. However, she would most notably spend most of her time on the team flirting with teammate Nuklon, aka Atom Smasher, who is part of the JSA Atom Legacy. It's so lovely the way things tie together. We would later see a one-shot Batman Wildcat team-up comic in which a boxing protege of Ted Grant wanted to be like his mentor in all ways, stealing one of Ted's old costumes and going out as Wildcat in Gotham City. In an attempt to break up a secret fight club where cage villains fought to the death, Ramirez was himself caught and later killed by Killer Croc in the ring. Ted Grant and Batman would team up to shut down the club and send the two villains running the club to jail. Our final aspect of this legacy is Ted Grant's youngest son, Tom Bronson, who Ted Grant knew had fathered him but didn't help raise the kid. You know, one of those awkward, I'm not ready to be a father things. We're not going to judge people. These things happen. Doesn't make Ted Grant a bad person. Maybe a tad irresponsible, but not a bad person. We're not judging Ted right now. Eventually, though, Tom Bronson would be targeted as part of a scheme by a team of villains to wipe out any and all people connected with the JSA, trying to eradicate their legacy from the face of the earth. Because, hey, when you get beat up by the JSA enough, you get a little petty, a little vengeful, and a little rude. Tom Bronson, however, does have powers. He has the ability to change into a werepanther at will, although he initially has problems controlling his savage instincts in this form. After the initial adventure, Tom agrees to spend time with Ted and the JSA, learning to control his powers and his mentality better while in his werepanther form. Tom would, after enough reconciliation between the two, agree to share the Wildcat name with his father. However, when the much larger JSA roster split into two squadrons, the so-called JSA All-Stars, which was comprised by and large of the younger heroes with a couple mentor members there to keep an eye and continue to guide them, Tom will not only go with that team, but take a name of his own as Tomcat. He also confirmed that in his werepanther form, he has the associated enhanced senses of most large predatory felines. And that wraps it up. I know this video is actually a bit of a short one, but I mean, as I said, most of Ted Grant's history is the history of the Justice Society. And we've already discussed most of the Justice Society's major, story arcs. The only thing I can really throw in here for a story, because, as I said, Tom Bronson, again, he was used mostly in the JSA team book. Yolanda Montez was a briefly serving hero. Didn't even exist in the entirety of the Infinity Inc. book, which ran for only about 5 years. So, it's a short legacy, all things considered. But it is an important legacy, as I said. Yolanda's brief tenure would lead to Calypso temporarily serving the side of good against his will, and Wildcat, besides having romantics with a couple superheroines, has also helped fight train many other superheroes, even those outside of the JSA and its various incarnations. I mean, really, the only thing I can say is, in the modern JSA book that started in the late 90s, there was a particular story arc where, after getting injured in a fight, Ted Grant was left alone at the JSA's headquarters, which was itself a converted brownstone and so had plenty of residential areas, and during the night was attacked by a version of the Injustice Society, team of classic Justice Society villains that had several roster variants, in which he had to use his strategy and analytical thinking I mentioned earlier, along with his street smarts cunning, to take the villains out one at a time, saving both his life and preventing them from later ambushing the other JSA members. It's a fun one-off comic book that really shows Ted Grant at his best, but I mean, as I said, that's more just about how great the JSA book was. You know? But that's okay, because sometimes you just need a good, short, and sweet video. We'll be back next week. Video will probably be a little bit longer. I do hope you continue to watch. Don't hold it against me that we're about a good 10, 12 minutes short of our usual run time. Hey, if nothing else, it just means it's a quicker run to the weekend for you. If you are watching this live on Friday, because it is Friday Ramblings, or even if you're watching it Saturday morning. I don't know. And if you're watching this any other day of the week, hey, it's just a slightly quicker blast of fun for you. Still, as I always say, let's go through the YouTube cliches, alright? Subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, leave comments. Hit me up on Twitter if you want. Leave suggestions for future topic ideas. Just remember the rules of Roulette Productions, and that is, we do not rage, we do not rant, we do not hate. Roulette Productions is all about the silver lining in the storm clouds, and remembering that entertainment is meant to be entertaining. Even if people fail to entertain you, respect the fact that they were trying their best. That is all we ask. You can still be critical, as long as it is constructive criticism. And remember, when it's all said and done, I appreciate you. You watch my videos. For that, I gotta like you. Even if it's just a little bit. Even if you leave a comment telling me I suck at this. The fact you took the time to write that comment, that means something to me. You know? It means even if I stink at it, I stink enough to make you care enough. Tell me I wasted your time. Silver linings. Silver lining to the storm cloud. This is why I don't do videos about, making art. This is my horrible squiggly line cloud that probably weaves in and out of itself like a Mobius strip. It's horrible. Still, I'll see you in 7. We'll ramble about something else. And we got a few more JSA members to break down. So you can appreciate the fact that, hey, the JLA may get the movie deals, but the society will always be awesome. See you in 7, folks.